If you're someone who constantly suffers with neck pain that seems to get worse and worse as the day gets on and gets stiff and achy all over, then this video is for you, because I'm going to talk to you about how your diet may actually be contributing to what you're feeling. Hi, I'm Trevor Cicutti, CEO of SpineWise, and if you already know that you have a neck problem and you already know that somehow or another your diet might be contributing to it and fatigue is a big problem for you, then just send me a message or post up your favorite emoji below and I'll get you some help straight away. Otherwise, in this video, what I want to talk to you about is how your diet may actually be contributing to that chronic achy neck pain. So, when we look at neck pain and we look at the way our head functions and our neck functions, one of the big problems we have when we've gone from being on all fours to being upright is this thing called gravity. And this is a massive problem for us, all of us that stand on two legs as a species. And it affects us in many different ways and we neurologically try and cope with it. But when it comes to neck pain, there's a very specific, interesting mechanism that becomes important for us. So to start with, when gravity is putting a force down, it's always pushing us down. So one of the ways that we combat that is always to contract up. So we're always trying to maintain ourselves in an upright position. And one of the problems that occurs is that it constantly requires muscle contraction. So we need constant muscle contraction in order to stop that from being a big problem for us, and in order to stop us from falling over. The other thing we need a posture that actually minimizes the load. So what do I mean by that? I mean a posture which kind of keeps us somewhat vertical. If we drop forward even 15 degrees like this, the load actually creates a lever angle, and that actually increases the workload on our neck. So the further forward we go with our head carriage, here, the further forward we go with our head carriage, the bigger the problem becomes for our neck, and the more muscular contraction we need. And the final big thing that's important with this is aerobic endurance, which is, it's okay if you can stand upright and you contract properly and you've got all the strength in the world, but the question is, can you maintain that for 12 hours a day? And this is now talking about endurance. So before we go into the key secrets with this and how you can change it all and what you can potentially do with it, I want to talk to you about energy mechanisms. So if you already know you have a problem and this postural issue is yours and you want to get some help, just message me below or post up your favorite emoji and I'll get you some help. Otherwise, let's get into the nitty-gritty of this. So when we start first looking at Krebs cycle function, this is important because we need to understand how energy is produced. So we've got two main ways into our energy cycle, our main energy cycle, which is what we call our Krebs cycle. The first one is via glucose. So glucose, which is derived from both protein and carbohydrate, comes in and gets converted into our Krebs cycle to spit out energy. And we have the side effect from this of producing this substance called lactic acid. And lactic acid then can potentially alter our pH in our blood, can alter a lot of other things and reduce oxygenation of tissues, create inflammation, a whole lot of other stuff can come as a result of lactic acid. The other way in is via fat metabolism, what we call beta oxidation. And this fat metabolism goes in the same way that we would for glucose, spins through our Krebs cycle and produces energy. The good thing about this though is that this pathway doesn't produce lactic acid, which means we have less likely to get blood pH problems from it and create other problems such as oxygenation. So the reason all this is important is really when we start talking about posture and endurance with energy. So the big thing with this that we need to understand is that all of your postural muscles, the ones that hold you upright against gravity, are very much aerobic based muscles. So we have two types of muscle fibers. You might have heard them in the past called fast twitch and slow twitch, or sprinting fibers and endurance fibers. And we have these two breakdown of muscles because they actually perform very, very different tasks. So our postural muscles are endurance muscles. These are the things really which we see a lot in our legs and our glutes, and these things are designed to last for a long period of time, provide us with long periods of energy, but they don't necessarily have the same level of explosiveness and contractility that we have from our fast twitch muscles. Our fast twitch muscles we see a lot more in our upper body, where we have less need to maintain constant contractions with our arms out wide for a long period of time. But we have to be able to move really rapidly, like to throw things and to catch things. So what we're talking about here is our postural aerobic muscles. So aerobic muscles are the ones that tend to give us our posture and allow us to stay upright against gravity for the whole day. And this is important because our postural muscles, being aerobic, generally tend to, and we're being, again, a little bit oversimplified with this, but they tend to predominantly burn fat as their main energy source. So they like high levels of oxygen and they like fat, and in doing both of those together, basically they allow us to produce energy. The good thing about that is you have an endless supply of energy from fat. Now, yes, you may be overweight, maybe not. That's totally irrelevant. Even the leanest of leanest marathon runners in the world can produce thousands and thousands of calories from stored fat. So we have this endless supply of energy. So if your blood sugars were to drop really, really low and you go what we call hypoglycemic, you're still not going to lay there on a forest unable to move. You're still able to stand up and maintain your posture because we can just use fat to produce that energy. So this is really important to understand, is that our postural muscles all use aerobic-based fibers or slow twitch fibers in order to keep themselves up. And this is a very fat-dependent energy mechanism. So we also need to understand with that then that fat metabolism is critical in terms of maintaining our posture. Fat metabolism is incredibly important with this, as we said before, is because this is the main energy source for all of our postural muscles. So what's the big thing that impedes this mechanism more than anything else? And that is a hormone known as insulin. So most of you would have heard this with our diabetics. So insulin is something that's used to control or bring down their blood sugars. Insulin is also the main thing that we use to store fat. So for every gram of carbohydrate you consume, 50% of that is put into immediate energy source, and 40 to 50% is stored as fat, especially as a substance called triglycerides, which allows you to use that energy later on. So if you've eaten, say, a big breakfast and you're not going to eat till, say, 8 o'clock tonight, you've got the time and the stored energy to be able to just produce energy on your own, which is what we're talking about with this mechanism here. So one of the key things with insulin is it's a fat storage hormone. This is why so many weight loss programs tell people to come off carbohydrate. But for us, in terms of our postural mechanisms, insulin is one of the things that stops this mechanism from working, and it gives you that fatigue feeling that, I need to lean on something all the time. This is one of the key markers that we see with people who have insulin irregularities and they're affecting posture, is that inherent need to slouch or lean on something right throughout the day. So the biggest cause of insulin spiking that we have is glucose, which comes again from this area here. And the richest source of glucose we have, or the biggest availability of glucose derived from, is from carbohydrate. So what is a carbohydrate? So carbohydrate is pretty much anything that comes from the ground. It's basically a fancy word for sugar. So with the exception of our seeds and nuts, most of the foods that come from the ground are in some way, shape or form carbohydrate. So controlling carbohydrate and getting the ratios right and getting the mechanisms right to bring your insulin levels down, in a lot of people will improve their aerobic muscular function, and in doing so will increase their endurance, and they find that throughout the day they no longer fatigue and their neck pain settles down. So if you want to know more about all this stuff, I'm going to post up another video next week specifically talking about insulin and glucose and carbohydrates, which will help you understand of how you can actually improve your own mechanisms to try and reduce that fatigue pattern. But if you have any concerns, or you know this is already you and you want to get some help, just message me or post up your favorite emoji below and I'll get you some help straight away. Anyway guys, thanks for watching. Remember, it's all about adding life to your years, not necessarily years to your life. Catch you in the next vid. See you guys.